Okay, I'm Bethany.
Hi, I'm Stevie.
Yeah. And okay, so Stevie's gonna start us off. Stevie, do you want to just kind of tell us like what somatic experiencing is and kind of what we're gonna talk about today?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm Stevie. I'm a clinical social worker and I'm a somatic experiencing therapist. Um, I always try to distill this all the way down to the most basic, simple parts, and it's always people always have more questions, which is totally fine. But what somatic experiencing does is it helps to address trauma at the body level using using the nervous system essentially in order to complete self-protective responses. So basically, we're utilizing the body and signals that are coming up in this session in order to help clients do something, even if it's imagined, that didn't get to happen during
Yeah.
trauma or the traumatic experience.
So cool.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
wild.
it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds very like vague. I'm trying to think, do you have like a specific experience that you like give people or example?
Yeah, so it's easier when we're talking about like a big T trauma. So what I mean by that
Mm,
is one specific trauma that happened, which for example, the example I always give is okay, so somebody had a car accident in which they didn't brake fast enough and didn't swerve. They just kind of froze and now they're afraid to
yeah.
drive on the highway, right? Um, so they're having a lot of activation when they're driving. So high heart rate, very hyper vigilant, really avoidant of driving. So what that could look like, again, this is going to be a very clean example. It doesn't always look like this, is
Yeah.
we're sitting in session and I'm having them recall the memory or it's coming up. So I'll pause and I'm like, okay, what's happening now in your body? Again, there's a lot of scaffolding that has to happen to get somebody to where they're able to even say what is happening in their body, but they might say, okay, I'm feeling like really anxious right now, and we'll slow it down. We'll say, okay, how are you experiencing anxiety? And they might say something like, okay, well, I'm having a hard time breathing, and I just feel myself kind of looking everywhere. And again, we'll slow it down. It's like, okay, can you feel yourself looking? Can you notice that you're looking around as you're kind of approaching this car behind you, even in your imagination?
Yeah.
And then when we slow things down, different impulses in the body will come up. So, for example, and this is a client that I've actually had, they were like, I feel like my foot really wants to push really hard. I'm like, great. Can you do that? Can you do that slow but really feel it? So again, we're completing this self-protective response of getting to like slam on the brake.
Mm,
And then later we're looking for signs that the nervous system is like coming down, like there's signals of safety afterwards, which again is the kind of the puzzle piece that doesn't get to arrive after a trauma event.
yeah.
So we're allowing ourselves to be complete that self-protective response and then feeling into the safety afterwards.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. That's so interesting. And like kind of why we're doing this is because when Stevie and I talk, it's like there's so much overlap between that like physical therapy side of things, especially when we're working with people who have had any trauma um and then the like somatic experiencing and all of that. So we just overlap so much in those with those patients, overlap in like doing different things. But yeah, I see that a lot when you were talking about that patient and like I might see that in clinic as a physical therapist of like people come in with like calf pain or something and it may not even be related to, you know, to the car accident, but it's like, okay, it's showing up in running or something that they're doing daily and they're like, gosh, it just like won't go away. And a lot of times it's just like, okay, calf tightness. But then when we see like, gosh, it's not getting better, not going away, and it feels I don't know how to kind of explain the difference in like pain between like that like chronic tightness versus like, oh, we have an injury that led to this pain.
Mhm.
Both of those things are kind of like trauma related, but there is like something like I feel like our clients that overlap are the people that like it just doesn't go away with just the typical like musculoskeletal treatment of that tissue. It like gets better for a little bit and then comes right back because they haven't gotten to complete that circuit, I guess, what you were talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's that, everyone's talking about, well, not everyone, everyone in my circle, it's like that the body keeps the score, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
even if that and this is where it's so important, I think, to partner with
Yeah.
physical therapy is okay, what is structural, like what is happening versus what is an emotional thing or
Hmm.
an experience thing in the nervous system that hasn't been quite um, worked with yet.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of times it's both. Like when
Right.
we're in physical therapy and they're like, well, and I'm saying your nervous system is responding to this tightness and create, I don't want to say creating pain, but kind of like your brain is trying to
Mhm.
protect you
Mhm.
from that thing happening again. So it's creating tightness there so that you can slam on that brake faster next time. And so
Right.
that actually is happening. So like physiologically, you have a trigger point or something that can be released and feels bad when we press on it, but that doesn't mean that it's just the trigger point. Like it
Right.
also has that brain component or nervous system component, which
Yeah.
is takes like a lot of time and sitting with that to understand too, because a lot of times it feels like it's either in my head and it's not real, or it's just a trigger point that needs to be released.
Right. I know that
Mhm.
that's really hard to sometimes get clients to believe, is they're so used to not having their pain believed,
Yeah.
or their experience believed that,
Hmm.
and that even though there's a new term that I should know, but we're trying not to use the term psychosomatic anymore because it has a connotation like,
Yeah.
oh, you're crazy or it's in your head. Well,
Hmm.
just because it has its root causes in trauma and emotional pain, that doesn't mean that that actual physiological pain is not real. The mind and body aren't separated like that. It's not how it
Hmm.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Love
Yeah.
it. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so backing up a little bit because I feel like we dove in and a little deep, but should we go back and talk about like what the nervous system is and what it does, or what do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that sounds great. Um, so I always, the way that I like to go about this, especially with clients, is helping them to get a better feel for the different nervous system states,
Hmm.
um, which has a lot of really great practical applications, especially with, any physical therapy work. Um, and so I like to go through the three different nervous system states. So the first one is, again, I'm going to be using the polyvagal theory developed by Stephen Porges. If anybody wants more information on that, there's plenty of resources out there. But so this first state is the state that we always think about when we say we're regulated. Um, but really what that is, it's this ventral vagal state. It's a part of the parasympathetic nervous system. And it's the state that we like to be in because we feel connected to other people, we can problem solve, we feel really grounded and present. It's more of that like rest and digest place a lot of us like to be. I mean, I think everyone likes to be in.
Yeah.
Um, and then what happens is we move into a different state. We move into a different part of our nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight and flight. So we alert to any sort of danger or threat, and then we move up into fight or flight. So this is a lot of activation. This is where anxiety lives. This is where you might see more of that like sweating, hypervigilance. You might see a lot of like gastrointestinal distress, that sort of thing. And then what happens if we can't fight or flee our way out of that and come back down into that ventral vagal state? we can only do that for so long or sustain that for so long until we kind of go offline. So this is where we get into the more freezy state. It's called the dorsal vagal part of our parasympathetic nervous system. And that is when we feel really disconnected, disassociated. Again, we're going to see things like lethargy, things like constipation, all of that good stuff. We feel numb.
Yep.
And so again, so these are the three states that we can be in. And sometimes it can be a little bit like blendy,
Yeah.
in terms of the states. But it's important to, it can be really helpful to understand where you're at any given moment,
Hmm.
um, so that you know how to take care of yourself. The same thing that works when you're in a freeze is not going to work when you're in fight or flight. And like, yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Because, I mean, there are times when those states are uh, like we're supposed to kind of be able to go in and out of those things. It's like when we get kind of stuck in
Mhm.
freeze or fight or flight that it becomes like a problem for our nervous system. Is that?
Especially like a chronic stress or
Hmm.
even that developmental trauma. It doesn't have to be this big T thing that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a problem when we're stuck, when we feel stuck in one, or
Hmm.
one, I see a lot of clients where like one just seems to be their go-to and they get there really fast.
Yeah.
Instead of like, we skip the problem solving stage and we go straight to like, I'm, just angry and got that fight response, or I'm completely disconnected.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we want to help people not stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. That's awesome. It's just I mean, yeah, all of it's interesting because I'm like that. We're doing that a lot of times in physical therapy, like especially dry needling, because when we needle like a trigger point or a muscle and release it, it's like a big nervous system response. And even in in the courses, they talk about that and stuff, and you just feel really like fatigued afterwards because those like muscles get when they contract and get stuck contracted, they ball up and create like a spot that's painful. And so when
Mhm.
we release that spot, dry needling is when the needle goes into the muscle and like releases that like in a really efficient way. And so it happens really quickly. That sometimes like you get sweaty palms or like some people will like laugh or you'll have tears or I mean those are kind of bigger responses. A lot of times it's just like that hurts or is,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just interesting because that like it's your especially if it's a spot that's been emotionally held on to for a long time, like especially in the shoulders, when you're, hunched over a computer,
Mhm.
and all those things. When we release that, it just like kind of feels like it's like feels like a dead arm or feels like just everything is like my brain is tired because your body is just like, oh my gosh, blood flow. And it honestly just is a big like nervous system swing and shift. So,
Yeah, and I think that it's so interesting that you bring up the like the crying
uh-huh.
and the laughing in
Yeah.
particular, because those are interesting ways in which a nervous system discharges that energy. So like
Hmm.
the shaking, the laughing, the crying is like, oh, we're getting some parasympathetic activation here, right? Like we're starting
Yep.
to get to that rest and digest a little bit.
Yeah.
And it can look different for everyone, but yeah, even the laughing, it's yeah.
It is funny because people are like, "Oh, that's ticklish," and I'm like, "Well, it's really tight. Might be ticklish, but I'm not trying to. It's more of like that nervous system is trying to protect you a little bit and be like, no, 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 we're fine."
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, what you're talking about with it, like tensing up, balling up, and then having this like kind of this release,
Hmm.
reminds me of some of the stuff that you and I have talked about, especially when we're working with our our mutual clients, with some of the resourcing work that has been really
Hmm.
helpful for people in order to like uh basically stand or have capacity to do some of that work, which really echoes what we do in
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean like the like homework kind of exercises where like, well, yeah, especially for like chronic like pelvic pain, we see that a lot where you kind of like your brain, you can explain this better, but our brain just kind of like shuts off communication with certain areas if the stimulus becomes like too much. And so our to protect ourselves, we'll just kind of feel numb or like disconnected from a certain area, especially I see it a lot in pelvic pain. It just kind of feels like it feels painful, but they can't really describe or um, tell me what feels painful very
Mhm.
well because they've kind of disconnected from it a little bit. So then when we go to touch them, it feels like either a lot or it feels like nothing. And both of those extremes are a big cue to me that that is abnormal, right? Like we should feel somewhere
Right.
in the middle when have a light touch. It shouldn't feel super painful and also shouldn't feel like nothing.
Mhm.
So we'll do things like laying on your stomach or just vibration, different like m ways to stimulate the muscle and the skin and the nerves to just kind of like wake it up without it and make it feel like neutral. Like it's not
Yeah.
positive or negative. It's just a neutral sensation, which is really
Mhm.
hard for people to feel
Yes.
neutral. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That is, so that's like what you're talking about is kind of psychologically what we do in
Yeah.
somatic work is I always use the pool metaphor with people. People get kind of annoyed when we start treatment and I'm like, okay, well, we need to figure out what in your body do you have access to, even or emotionally do you have access to that even feels neutral. It feels like, you know, because right, people are so used to either being completely offline where they're having no sensation, they're numb, or it's this like huge fight flight response where it's too much. And we want to find this space where we can go that's, okay. Like okay enough is what I say. Is it
Mhm.
okay enough? And this helps to build our capacity to tolerate difficult sensation or difficult emotion. Um,
Mhm.
and so we call this like resourcing, but
Mhm.
it could be anything. It could be, an image, a thought, a memory. It could be a physiological sensation, you know, and that is a really important piece of the work that you do too, right?
Yeah.
Is can we, we've not that you're forcing anybody to dry needle their hips,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
like if we're gonna do this, where are the edges of this tension? Like, or
Yeah.
can you bring your awareness to a different part of your body that feels okay? Like we forget that when there's pain or when there's intensity anywhere, that like our whole body isn't that.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful and grounding for people to like be able to do the work to be like, actually, my feet feel okay. Or
Yeah.
what happens even in my body when I think about that like lovely vacation I went on, can I relax even just a little bit to send signals of safety to my nervous system so that I'm not like
Yeah.
flying off the table
Yeah.
when Bethany starts to do her work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like bringing that awareness in like a very like safe and controlled way uh,
Hmm.
to your brain. I kind of explain pain to people too as like it's like if there was an alarm on your phone that you could like at first you can snooze it and so it goes away and so then when the alarm comes back on it's like really strong and loud. But then if you couldn't snooze it or turn it off, it would just be like constantly going and eventually it wouldn't feel like it's as loud to you because
Hmm.
you have to continue functioning with your
Hmm.
life and you can't listen to
Hmm.
that alarm. But then you have such a hard time like attending to the alarm and actually knowing what it feels like because or like what it sounds like because it's just been happening for years and years and years and so you're just like that is just part of my system now and so
Right.
sometimes it changes the sound might change and so then it's like okay yeah it's more apparent because like the sound changed but like you still can't snooze it so then you just get used to it and then it's harder to how long has that been going on? What does it sound like? It's hard to describe because your brain is just that's what your brain is supposed to do with like your
Mhm.
clothes. If you felt
Yeah,
every sensation of your clothes all day long, you'd be so annoyed. So it's
right.
like it takes that input, acknowledges it, and then kind of like you don't have to attend to it anymore. But with
Hmm.
pain, it's that like alarm that like shouldn't be happening but is happening. And so then it's really hard to tell how yeah, how to turn it off and then how loud it is and when it's going off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's so interesting because I say this to my clients all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, the body is t literally telling the story of what like your mind is not ready to, or like it's
Hmm.
giving us all of this rich information. And again, like we cannot cut off like, oh, this is this is our emotional mental health piece up
Yeah.
here, and then
Yeah.
everything else just lives below the neck.
Yeah.
That's not
Exactly.
how it works. So
Exactly.
it's yeah, it's just fascinating how even that like as you're talking, you're using that example of the calf pain, how that can give us so much information as to like what might be happening at the emotional level. And
Hmm.
just like with the pain, if it keeps going on and on and on, and we start to have less understanding of what it is, or we start to dissociate from it,
Hmm.
right? It's the
Yeah.
people who are like, oh yeah, I have all this trauma, but I'm totally fine. And it's like, I think you've learned to numb, which is a
Yeah.
very legit survival strategy.
Yes.
But just like in the body, how can we learn to tolerate just a little bit of
Hmm.
the input sensory wise or the input emotionally? Can we stay with that for a little bit so we can build capacity and
Yeah.
expand your tolerance level for this, which makes life so much easier.
Yes.
Yeah,
Totally. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Those reactions, like physically and mentally, that are so extreme,
Hmm.
don't have to be as extreme all the time.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's where I think it's really important for like I give clients, I'm not huge on homework, but um
Yeah.
I know you are.
Well,
You're
no, yes and
like,
no, because I don't love homework either. That's why I'm laughing, because I'm like, most of the time with PT, you're like, oh, they're gonna give me lots of homework. I'm like, my limit is three exercises, because
I
no,
like that.
that's what your brain can remember is three at a time. So I'm like, that's all I'll give you.
That's great. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Anyway, sorry
I
to interrupt.
No, you're good. I mean, I called you out as a homework person. I yeah, I think when people are like, how do I practically practice some of
Hmm.
that, like what's too much, what's not enough, like how can I learn to tolerate sensation or emotion? There's like
Hmm.
so many ways that you can do that. Like yin
Yeah.
yoga, how far is too far in a stretch? And like, how do you know it's too much? I annoy the living daylights out of my clients because I'm like, how do you know it's good? How do
Yeah.
you know it's bad? How do you know it's too much? How do you know it's not enough? And
Love that.
so practicing that, and then you can, practice that with a partner. Like if they're sitting on the couch, you know, how close is too close? What's too far? How do you know that, right?
Yeah.
And with stretching, running, it's like what are your limits and boundaries, and how can you stay within that just right amount to where you're moving the needle but not re-traumatizing yourself. Like weightlifting, you want to lift heavy but you don't want to like blow your knee out. What's that just right amount?
Yeah.
um that helps build tolerance, which is super important. And I'm sure you have like things that you do as well in PT for that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is like a skill that we have to learn of like because I think a lot of people are like don't, I usually use the pain scale in the wrong way, I guess, of like 0 to 10 and 10 is like you're in the hospital, 0 is you don't feel anything. Like we're kind of looking for that like middle like 5 if you're past that like 5 to where it's like painful. Like we want to stay below that. And I think I'm sure you've talked to me about the window of tolerance and
Mhm.
like um that kind of stuff. And I use that all the time too. Of like we're trying to push the window open just a little bit. We're not trying to like just throw it open and let all the cold air in all at
Right.
once. But people want to do that to just like I want to get better fast. Like I just want to
I
like
know.
and yeah, I wish we could do that. That'd be
That'd
a
be
lot
great.
easier. Yeah.
That's
But
where we see people, even in therapy, like wanting to have these huge cathartic releases.
yeah.
And it's like you could actually just be responding to trauma again without
Hmm.
actually feeling better. You could just be
Yeah.
going all the way over, and just flooding
Hmm.
yourself.
Yeah.
And then you're just gonna have to keep doing that over and over because it's not actually helping you. But can we get to like that 5 on this scale
Yeah.
and really be with it and get some good information that really helps you to complete some of those self-protective responses too?
Hmm.
Um, because it's tolerable enough
Yeah.
um to again like build that muscle of capacity and being able to be a difficult sensation or emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some ways you like have people do that at home, I guess?
Yeah, like one is some of that boundary work with like how do you have to
Yeah.
work on how do
Knowing.
you know when it's too much or not
Yeah.
enough. So if somebody's especially with developmental trauma, where they're used to having their boundaries pushed over and over and over and they don't have any really boundaries anymore, it's really slowing it down and being like, okay, do that exercise with your partner on the couch. How close is close enough? What's not enough? So, or that stretching, what's enough? What's not? Even in the shower, you can practice that with like, what's too cold and how do I know that? So it's
Hmm.
developing that trust in your inner awareness
Hmm.
that, like this is too much or not enough for me. And then with the emotional component, I really don't, I mean, unless they want to. I'm not a huge fan of being like, push the boundaries of that at home. I mean, you can do whatever you want to, but I would like to help guide it in a helpful way. But so in session, practically what that looks like is I'll notice, okay, there's a lot more activation present. Your nervous system's doing these things. And instead of what we would typically do in talk therapy, which is, can we take some deep breaths? Can we think about something? Whatever. I'm gonna say, can we stay here? Is it at the 5 or are we at a 10? If it's at a 10, let's do the grounding. But if it's at a 5, we can have this really rich opportunity to actually provide feedback to your nervous system that like feeling this feeling or revisiting this trauma memory is not actually going to kill you. And you can
Yeah.
actually find safety in your body because you are staying with it and
Hmm.
getting confirmation. It gives us that opportunity to feel into like, oh yeah, I do need to press the brake with my right foot. So that's kind of where we want to play with that like window of tolerance.
Yeah. It's so cool because hearing you talk about it from like the emotional perspective going into the physical, where a lot of times I'm starting with the physical and then going into like the emotional of like, okay, so your low back is bothering you like constantly. So then I'm usually having people look out, okay, are there times when your low back isn't bothering you? Or like, are there things that make it better? Are there things that make it worse? Because then that helps us turn the volume down on that like
Mhm.
alarm or back pain over time. But also like your low back pain is giving you a lot of like signal right now. So then also like what does that emotionally, I don't know, a lot of times the emotional stuff comes like later where like all of a sudden as we get the volume turned down a little bit, then it's like, oh yeah, and I had this like car accident or they're talking to me while I'm like working on their back and then all of a sudden this like random memory comes up,
Mhm.
of something that happened when they were a teenager or something. It's like, oh wow, that feels really connected
Mhm.
to the back or something like that. So it's just interesting hearing you talk about like that. It's so often we want to turn off the emotional pain and then our body does like the body keeps the score. So often we just like want to turn off the emotional pain, but then our body, feels that. And
Mhm.
so a lot of times when we're so focused on like not feeling or not attending to that emotional trauma or emotional pain, our body is taking that on in other ways. And then
Right.
you're gonna feel it either way, maybe, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you're gonna feel it either way. It's like
Yeah.
this uh uh Nicole Sachs, who wrote Mind Your Body.
Yeah.
She I want everyone to read it, so read it.
Okay.
But
Well, I'll have to
she
write it down.
she talks about just that, like you and this is what we see is you have this kind of emotional reservoir, and if you're really like if you're either you get this idea that it's too much to feel or look at or be with, the nervous system, says, okay, well, this is too much. But pain might be safer to feel, essentially. That is way oversimplifying.
Yeah.
But it says, okay, well, we'll just feel pain. And also, sometimes being in pain is the way that we can get our needs met. Again, this is not manipulative, but think about what happens when
Yeah.
you're in pain. You get to take a break, you get to ask for help, you get to do all of these things that you don't normally get
Hmm.
to let yourself do. And
Yep.
so there's actually so much power in addressing the emotional component at the same time
Yeah.
because it like gets that water out of the reservoir. You're not holding all of this stuff which is transferring into pain, and you're like dealing with the root cause. But I think
Yeah.
that's why you will start seeing a person and refer to me, and I will start seeing
Yeah.
a person for you, because it's like you have to do both at the same time.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is like some power in it not being all with the same person because I feel like sometimes people will joke with me. I mean, I'm sure the same with you of like, oh, my pain's so much better. Like, oh, you're just my therapist. And I'm like, no, 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 because there is like it is sometimes like I mean not sometimes, it is all the time like nice to have like, okay, I'm taking care of my like physical person and there is validity to my pain.
Yeah.
And I also know that my nervous system is responding in a way that's not healthy all the time or like not healthy, but not yeah, what's the word I'm looking for? Not
Like it's
helping me.
misguided.
Yes.
It thinks it's helping you, but it's a little misguided, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we actually don't have to panic all the time. We can be
Yeah.
here and it's fine. Nothing's actually gonna kill me. It's just like trying to
Yeah.
help you out, but it's bless its heart.
It's a
It's
little
just
mama bear. It's just like a little
yeah,
overprotective.
exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so good.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I guess I joked that Stevie and I could talk when we were talking about this webinar. I was like, how long is this going to be? Because we could talk for 2 hours if you let us. But does anyone have questions since we have people here? Or is there anything else we missed, Stevie, also?
Hmm. Let
I'm
me
looking
think about
back at our
that
notes.
while people ask questions if anything pops up.
Yeah. I'm looking at the comments. The Goldilocks Principle. I think I've heard of that book. I don't know if I've read the whole thing, but that sounds about like right what we were talking about. Yeah. And then really hard time what deciding what feels okay and what doesn't feel okay in pelvic floor PT. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I usually in that case have people do like their homework is just kind of sitting with in that neutral space,
Hmm.
whatever that may be. So with like you usually we start with things that are like positive and then kind of working towards neutral so that we can work towards negative kind of.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of
Um, yeah. Okay, and then someone asked, are there exercises we can do at home on our own to become more embodied, or is this a practice that should be supervised?
Yeah, there are tons of things that you can do. So one of the things that I would um have you try to notice is, are you living more in that sympathetic, that fight flight, or are you living more in the freeze, like that disassociated kind of foggy? If you're in that freezy where you feel really disembodied, I always start with like, can you provide any feedback to yourself? So connect with the senses. Even like I'll have people be like, can't feel anything in my body. And I'll be like, can you do this to your finger? Can you feel that? Even if it's just a little bit. Can you use your nail? Like, what does that feel like? Good, bad, neutral? How do you know? So get really granular with it. And I think that yoga is another way to do this.
Hmm.
Okay, so you're going through it. How can you give yourself permission to take a break? How do you know when it's like one too many chaturangas? Like, how do you know? And how can you feel it? Right? Another good exercise is trying to connect that emotional component to a physiological sensation because those are connected, but we don't always know it. So, if you're feeling sad, see if you can pause and be like, "Where do I feel sad in my body?" Even if it feels ridiculous or stupid, like I don't know, like my back feels hollow. Okay, great. Like maybe that's your thing. But it's just starting to get to know your own flavor of how you carry your feelings and um, like what sorts of sensations are good, bad, neutral. Um, that's a little bit of a start. Everyone feels emotions in different parts of their body. Um, I don't want to say yes. Every emotion usually can be felt in the body. Now, to what extent? Sometimes it's really like some are more nuanced than others, I'll say. Um, but what I will say is the opposite, which I think is what Bethany, you were kind of talking about earlier, is a lot of the time, if we stay with a sensation in the body long enough, it will have an emotional component. And that's usually how I do it. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think also I was thinking while you were talking, like I feel like a lot of times just in my own like therapy journey, I'm like I feel a lot of anxiety in my shoulders, but I can also like I was able to specify that with my therapist when we were talking about like I was anxious about my daughter going to school, and then when we worked through that like anxiety, to me it felt like a backpack on my shoulders, you know. So
Yeah.
like I use that example a lot with my patients because I'm like that one's an easy one to share. But it does
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
kind of like as you work on that, like I don't know. I feel like feeling anxiety in your shoulders kind of makes sense, right? You kind of tend to
Hmm.
hunch and do this.
Hmm.
Um, but you can kind of feel it differently based on what you're going through in that time,
Yeah. And
maybe.
that's where like body scan meditations are really helpful just to get
Hmm.
used to feeling different sensation. And that's
Hmm.
also why sometimes it can be helpful to have a PT or a therapist on board because I can sit across from somebody and be like, you're talking about all of this, but like, what is your abdomen doing right now? Because I like see them
Yeah.
clenching up and bracing. And so, um, yeah, I think also just like what you were talking about earlier, people experience the same physiological sensation so much that they learn to tune it out.
Hmm.
And so part of what we're doing is unlearning that process, but you have to do that slowly so you don't feel overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really good way to. Okay, and then specify the question. Is somatic experiencing therapy available for kids in Kansas City? I'm sorry. I missed, I think that earlier. Sensory processing disorder and has very intense reactions to very little sensations.
Ye- Um, so yes, um, if you go to Somatic Experiencing's website, traumahealing.org, there is a directory there, and you can find providers in the area. Now, what I will say is sometimes the provider will be like a physical therapist or like any sort of body worker. So you want to be making sure you're looking for a um, a therapist, a licensed mental health provider. But yeah, in their directory, you'll be able to find that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Good. Okay. Any go-to or favorite polyvagal strategies to take patients from activated fight flight to ventral vagal?
Yeah. So Ryan, I always have people one thing that happens is people get like really ungrounded. And so I'll ask them like where are your feet? And if they're cross-legged, they might not be sincere PT, but um I'll have them push into their feet and sometimes that helps or I'll have them slowly push one foot and then the other foot. So we're getting that good bilateral, slow bilateral stimulation. And it's also mimicking a flight response. Um, or what I'll also do is do that exercise of, okay, does any part of you not feel that way? Um, and can you bring your awareness to that part? And every time I see their brain kind of go back to the activation, I'll be like, okay, great. And then can you come back to that like warm spot in your belly, whatever it is. And the last thing I'll have people do is, what's the impulse right now? Like, what is the impulse? I have people be like, I cannot sit on this couch for 1 minute longer. I cannot maintain eye contact with you. Great, get up, walk around, pretend I'm not here. And sometimes that's enough to have them get into that ventral vagal.
And then did you say, Ryan, are you a PT? Is that what you said, Stevie? Or no? Okay, perfect. I sometimes will if someone like walks in and I can just tell that they're like really amped, and they like lay down and they're like, I don't know, they're going 100 miles an hour and I'm just like you and they'll even say like, "Oh, I just feel really like activated or whatever right now," and they want to get on the table and they're like just whatever. They're just very activated but ready to go and get it over with or whatever we're doing. Sometimes I'll have them lay, depending on like what state they're in and how much like I want to like how much we're talking. If they're laying on their back, I'll like pedal their feet. So I'm standing like at their feet and then I'm pushing on on the ball of their foot at the same time I'm pushing down on the top of their foot and holding kind of firm pressure and then I'll switch and do the other side and kind of go back and forth and then just like tug on their ankles a little bit and that like bilateral stimulation really helps of like the deep pressure and then like the bilateral and that really kind of like and then have them take some deep breaths and that kind of calms them down. And then sometimes if they're feeling activated like while I'm working on them, which sometimes happens, like just things are getting like more activated or they're just feeling more sensation, I'll just kind of back off and do like a figure eight, like a big figure eight on their back, or like around their shoulder blades and do that like a few times and then switch direction just in that like figure eight bilateral stimulation is really calming to the nervous system too. I'll also do that on my daughter, for Rachel, before bed if she's feeling really activated, both of those things. So those are like physical touch things that I feel like work really well. And people usually are like, you can just like kind of feel their body just like simmer. I don't know how
Mhm.
else to say it.
Yeah, like that settle like
Yeah.
what I tell people is we're looking for that, especially parents. I'm like, we're looking for that. Like, when you're holding a baby and then all of a sudden you can feel them fall asleep. Like
Yeah.
that's what we're looking for your nervous system to do, to
Yes.
like be a little bit more like, huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Feel the baby falling asleep. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good questions, guys. Okay, cool. This was great.
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
free to, we will send out the recording to everyone on here and then, to those who signed up that didn't get to join. And then we'll also put some of those like books that were mentioned, I think, and then I think that was all we mentioned, right? Anything else we missed?
Yeah.
So yeah, but feel free. It'll have like Stevie's email address and everything on there. Stevie, are you taking new patients?
I have a bit of a wait list, but yeah, I can take new clients. And yeah, if anyone's interested in services with me, just email me, and we can chat about that. And then yeah, I also have a contractor named Lauren who works with me and she's also trained in somatic experiencing. And she's lovely.
Yeah, heard
Yeah,
wonderful things. So
she's great.
yeah, good. Okay, well, thank you so much. This was so wonderful. I learned so much too. So
Yeah,
good.
thank you. It was
Yeah,
lovely. I
yeah,
appreciate it. Thanks everyone for showing up.
yeah. Thank you guys.